Welcome to Security Boulevard, the cybersecurity podcast from the Futurum Group. We explore a variety of topics within cybersecurity and the technologies that drive it in each episode. And you can find us on securityboulevard.com, the Security Boulevard YouTube channel, TechStrong TV, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Let's meet today's panel of hosts before we jump into today's topic, starting with Fernando. Hey, Fernando, it's good to see you again.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's there's this quote or this Chinese thing like may you live in interesting times. Oh my goodness, that is so true for cyber. So
Absolutely. And of course, joining us is the lead guitarist for this little rock band, Mr. Mitch Ashley. Mitch, it's good to see you.
Great to be here. Fernando, I wonder if the Chinese proverb included, and you may need to show snow shovel during those interesting times.
I for those watching this now, like I'm up in Canada. For us today, the snow is absolutely it's not a problem. But I've seen pictures from our friends in the East Coast with snow like way high kind of stuff. So yeah, good luck to everybody. The one thing I would always recommend is I'm a proponent of ergonomic shovels, right? You know, the ones that have like the bent thing, right? They are very good for your back as opposed to the straight handle ones.
I am a fan of not being in places where it snows because that's just how I roll. But I get other fun weather. Luckily, I can hide from it. So let's jump into today's episode because we're going to be talking about AI. Once again, if you watched last week's episode, you heard myself and Mitch and Alan talking all about the fact that we now have the ability to discover so many different exploits, vulnerabilities, potential avenues of compromise, all thanks to things like Claude and some of the new tools that Claude is leveraging, thanks to our friends at Anthropic, who's programming Claude to do that. But we wanted to focus this episode on the fact that now it seems like everybody has that snow shovel for that snow problem that we've discovered. And it is the form of agentic AI security. It's this massive group of tools that are being released that promise to go out and plug all those holes that we just uncovered. You know, it reminds me of the traveling salesperson that would come around to your house and they'd sprinkle all the dirt on the floor and then they'd use your vacuum cleaner to vacuum it up. And oh, no, your vacuum cleaner doesn't do really well with that. But my magical $1,500 runs on fairy water vacuum cleaner, it'll pick up everything. It'll even pick up, you know, the gravel underneath your house and pull it through the floorboards. And you're like, but wait a minute, something doesn't feel right here. And I think there are a lot of people that are out there that maybe have that same kind of perspective when it comes to AI security. Can it really do what it says on the outside of the tin? Can it find these vulnerabilities? Can it patch them? Can it keep me from being attacked by the nefarious people using AI to leverage their capabilities? I want to kind of open this up to you both because you've done a lot of research into this area. Can we stem this tide before it becomes a tsunami?
we live we live in interesting times. I think that we cannot. I think that this is the we can pull in all the analogies about putting toothpaste back into the tub and the no, we can't, right? I think that this is an acceleration of what is required, and the challenge for security professionals, defenders primarily, right, is this is the time where you need to zero in um, on okay, out of everything that's happening in the world, what is important, right? So if I could pick a word for 2026, it wouldn't be agent. It may be context, right? What is the context for what's going on, right? Okay, Anthropic released 500. Anthropic released that Claude Opus 4.6 found 500 vulnerabilities. Great. Okay. Do any of those vulnerabilities affect us? If they don't, it's noise, right? It's not noise. But it's not an immediate signal, right? I think that we should all. This is the time for all of us to dig into our Eisenhower matrices. You know, the what's urgent and important, right? Is it urgent and is it important? Great, do it now. Is it important but not urgent? Okay, when do you plan to do it? Is it not important, not urgent, but not important but urgent? Okay, and not urgent, not important, forget it. But yeah, this is the time for context and prioritization.
Hold on. You brought up a good point, and I want to make sure that I get this in because I know Mitch has got something really smarter than me to say. But that Eisenhower matrix piece, I think, is the crux of the problem because the matrix was developed by a 5-star general who was in command of all allied forces in Europe. If you asked a private on Omaha Beach what his Eisenhower matrix looks like as far as urgency and importance, I promise you it would look radically different. And
Oh
that's
God,
the
yeah.
issue. But we're running into that problem now, right? Is there is a strategic aspect to a lot of this where we have to deal with resource contention. Well, why didn't you just pay for that? Because the security license for that particular thing would have bankrupted the company. So we're going to go without it and we're going to modify tactically on the ground when these problems come up. So to Eisenhower, it may be important that I get the 1st Armored Division into Bastogne a day early. To a private, his important thing is not getting left behind because he didn't get all of his stuff packed up in time to make it in a day early. So I think that the AI, like you said, context is super critical because when you're fighting inbound connection requests on the firewall versus how do I architect a software firewall strategy for my company, they both have critical needs for the security apparatus, but they look radically different whenever you're plotting it all out.
Oh, absolutely, right.
Er,
And I would argue that the Eisenhower matrix applies to everybody. Like, it's just what is urgent and important for you is different than what's urgent and important for someone else, and but it's about your uh, prioritization strategy for what you were doing, right? And
I don't have any great analogies for stories from either Chinese proverbs or military generals, but Yogi Berra had a great a great saying is, deja vu all over again, right? We're like, we keep living Groundhog Day again and again. Just my own personal journey is in 2002 or so, created a product that took all the output out of scanners, vulnerability Nesses and other scanners, and put it into a workflow tool. The immediate reaction was, that's really nice, but I don't have time to fix all that. I don't even know out of that what's even important to fix. We're in the same cycle again with AI. Okay, we can find 500 more vulnerabilities that have never been found. Maybe AI fixes them, maybe it doesn't. Does a human need to review it? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But creating more alerts, more information, finding more issues is not the problem, right? The problem is we are now it's not just context, it's cognitive load. I would add that plus cognitive load, Fernando, to your words of the year,
oh God,
because humans can't respond to that. So the vendors have to shift strategies from we're getting better at finding things to we're getting better at fixing things in a way that our users will trust it.
yes, and right, and your typical improv. Yes, and they need to overcome a key challenge, which is what got us here won't get us there, right? So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
act of finding a vulnerability is radically different than the act of fixing it. And I think that one of like as we were recording this just a few weeks ago, or sorry, just a few days ago, we had the release of Claude Code Security, and before that
Mhm.
we had the um, OpenAI has Aardvark, and AWS has the security agent, and so we're seeing this movement where there is there is an impetus to release security, the agentic capability to go beyond. Hey, what's the vulnerability? Here's the vulnerability in context, and here's the pull request to fix it, and so on. And that I, I think it's a step in the right direction. Right. The challenge is how do you organize your security program so that you can take that kind of input. That how does it fit into your into your pipeline, into your process. You know this hell of a lot better than me. Sorry, but fixing it requires an organizational shift, right? That people should be architecting for.
Organizationally, and I think also the vendor has to make that same shift, right? It's not just there's a big movement of shift left of vendors all moving into the IDE, right? All we're doing is pushing the snow from the driveway into one big pile to the left, making it bigger and bigger, and there's no way that a developer is going to dig out of that. It has to be automation. It has to be ways of fixing that, to your point, and fixing it in that context that the organization, the customer is going to accept, trust it, and be able to rely upon it, as opposed to having to double check 5 times the amount of work I have to check today out of code generation from Claude or whatever.
So I would argue that one of the reasons why those platforms look the way that they do kind of goes back to the vacuum cleaner example, but more importantly to an example that a friend of mine, Sam Clemens from the wireless space, wrote about one time in a blog post, and I kid you not, was entitled Drag Racing School Buses. There's a tendency in the wireless industry to enable ridiculous things straight out of the box. Why? Why would you have wide channels out of the box and all these bells and whistles turned on that you never do in a production network? It's because when people test these things, they take them out of the box, they plug them in, and they run the tests. They don't configure, they don't tweak, they don't maintain, they don't manage. They want to see what it's like. So a long time ago, somebody said, well, if I just turn on all the crazy bells and whistles out of the box, my test scores will look amazing. I think that a lot of these tools are designed for that out of the box, show it off to the customer thinking. Here are all of these alerts, and you're finding all of this stuff, and all of these things are stuff that only we can help you fix. Now, when you get the fix is we're going to roll all of these together. Like in the networking world, we get this a lot where like all of the devices on the other side of a WAN link will throw an alert when the WAN link goes down. So most modern observability platforms will cluster all of that stuff together and say, hey, the WAN link went down, which means some other stuff went down too, so that we don't get alert fatigue. We don't get the syndrome of like, I'm just going to ignore everything. I think that it does a disservice to people to say, look at all of the stuff that we found, when in reality, it's not maybe much more than we already knew about. It's just we want it to look impressive when it's like matrix code scrolling up and down on the screen when it's on the salesperson's laptop.
And I love sounding like a broken record, which I recognize is an expression that gets that is not as like yeah. Anyway, but sounding like a broken record, right? We go back to it's a problem of incentives, right? It's a problem that uh, it's a problem of information asymmetry, right? How are you evaluating the quality of the tools that you are buying? Well, oh, how many signatures do you find? Oh, how many alerts do you generate, right? And this is where we we encourage people to look into how are you selecting, what is your selection process for the tools that you are having, right? Where do they fit into, like, are you looking at them in isolation? Because Tom, to your point, if the wireless test requires wide channels because that's going to give you the best performance, uh, that's what you're going to, and you're being measured on that. Well, so what? Right? That's what I'm going to do. Doesn't matter the consequences. And this is where I to tie other things we've talked about in this podcast, right? We talked about the work that CISO was doing, right? Is doing, was doing, right? Secure by default, right? How it's pushing a very laudable effort of getting uh, cybersecurity vendors to release capabilities and products and offerings that are more quote unquote secure by default. There is a complement to that, which is secure by demand, right? How do we, as buyers of that technology, how do we change the RFPs, the tenders that we issue to be more demanding or to request security capabilities differently? And that is the thing that, as much as I love what's being done with uh, se- agentic security tools, they can't fix that. That is a cultural maturity organizational issue, and that requires people to do, at least for now.
Sure, I can fix
You
it.
know,
I'll just bundle it in as a service so it only charges you a month fee and it doesn't hit your CapEx. So therefore, I'm the lowest bid and I win.
I had that. I was thinking back. I had the really great privilege of interviewing Michael Coates, who was the former Twitter CISO, not too long after he left. This has been a few years back. He said something that really stuck with me is when I evaluate vendors, one of the top criteria is, will this require me to hire any more people? Because if it does, boing, it's off the list. We're not talking about it, even if it's managing a SaaS or a managed service, security service. And we're kind of been going through this model transition of how do we use AI in our products. And I'm a big fan of theory of constraints, Goldratt's work, which is, yeah, I think it's one of the most brilliant pieces of work. And it's he wrote a book called The Goal, and the goal was all about this guy trying to figure out running this plant, trying to figure out what is he trying to do, what are they trying to ultimately do, and the goal is making money. Right. So is adding more people making more money? No. Is that finding more vulnerabilities making more money? No. Those actually in the Toyota manufacturing sense create unplanned work. And now you have more work for people to do if AI isn't taking care of it. So I think it's a mistake for any vendors to accelerate their products at finding more problems. If it's accelerate their products at analyzing and reducing it to the urgent and important Eisenhower matrix, that's valuable, right? Because now you consume less resources. So you got to remember what the goal is. What are we trying to do? Yes, we're trying to block the bad guys, but not at the expense of making us go out of business.
So let me give you a counterpoint there, Mitch, because this is something that somebody brought up to me last year. One of the issues that we run into is it's all well and good to have a system that automatically remediates stuff in the background and then maybe provides a summary or something like that so that I don't have to do any extra work. The problem is that somewhere in that chain, somebody needs a number to justify the thing. And one of my friends last year was telling me that they were working on a system one time where the metric was tickets closed. We are only going to say that this solution was successful if we are closing more tickets than a given point in time. And immediately, my brain went, wait a minute. If the purpose of the system was to reduce the amount of tickets that are being generated, but you're grading the success of the system on how many extra tickets it closes, first of all, you're shooting yourself from the foot before you even start. But second of all, because nobody would do this, right? No, nobody would do this. What would stop me from generating 1,000 extra tickets and closing them immediately because they're all low priority? And then, it looks like I'm a hero, because we do fall into that trap often where we have something we wanted to succeed and we want to make sure that the people above us understand that. So are we willing to put our thumb on the scale just a little bit to make sure that this is the one that works this time?
Economics. There's those incentives all over the place.
Yeah, that was a nice lob right over the net to Fernando.
Right. we have to work. We have to understand that this is the game being played, and we have to be able to navigate that game. Right? It's not, Tom, to your point. It's blindly. Let's not measure in a way that creates that creates this kind of perverse incentive, right? Mitch, you brought up Goldratt and the goal. The thing that that always struck with me is that it's about understanding where the bottleneck is, right? If the bottleneck is closing tickets, right? If you do anything that doesn't help close tickets, you're not helping, right? And if you do anything that is after the ticket is closed, it doesn't help. The bottleneck, like the solution, every system has a bottleneck, right? The name of the game is how do you architect the system so that the bottleneck doesn't make a difference to your business outcome. That is the point.
But we already created this bottleneck, because how many times have you heard some CEO get on a news program and say there is now a mandate inside of my organization for my people to use AI? I want to get the numbers up. I want it to look like I'm on the forefront of things. And to Mitch's point,
Yep.
no, you should not be using this stuff. You should be checking the results of it in a sample. You should be dealing with the exceptions that the system can't handle. You should not be interacting with this system. It's like password resets, right? Password resets are probably the most elementary function of a help desk. And we have thankfully evolved to the point where we don't even need a human interaction with them anymore, right? You click on the forgot link, it sends you the verification. It's automated. Like I remember when I was first starting my career, like I thought when by this point in my career that 90% of my day was going to be filled with password resets, because that's all it ever was at the help desk level, right? I forgot my password. I need you to help me log in. Can you do this? And now, like, it's to the point where if I don't even remember, like, hey, I haven't logged into the system in a month, I'm just going to go ahead and reset my password, because why? Why not? We've automated that away. It means that we get to focus on the harder jobs. Absolutely. But then, like, what does that do for the metrics of utilization? Like the agents are out there running, they're doing their job, they're doing the things they're supposed to do. But then, somebody gets mad because, well, we're not using it nearly as much as the people across the way, and they're more successful than us by some made up metric that they talk about on the golf course every Thursday.
Yeah, to that point, that's the unplanned work problem in Goldratt's theory. The bottleneck is the constraint, right?
Yeah.
To Fernando's point, to say a little more about it, if you fix problems before the constraint, the bottleneck, all you do is make more work arrive faster, right? So you build up a bigger bottleneck. If you work on problems after the constraint, you create more capacity that's unused, is sitting there idle, right? So you're wasting resources. And as you solve one constraint, the next constraint will move somewhere else in the cycle. To now the issue is over here, so let's go tackle this. And the issue isn't to play whack-a-mole on constraints, but really to solve the right problems that you're doing. And so I think that's what we're saying is you are either planning your product cycle, your product benefits value to the customer. You always have to think about, so how is this going to reduce cognitive load, not increase it, reduce workload, not increase it, reduce the creation of unplanned work, not increase it, all of those things. So you want to be on the positive side of the value to the end customer, which ultimately is about making money and being profitable and having happy customers, employees, et cetera. So whether it's security products or another product, that's why I'm such a big fan of Goldratt. I'm glad we should do a whole series on Goldratt.
We should.
Fernando, you and I could go crazy.
Yeah, no, we should. Because it applies everywhere, right? It applies. Frankly, it applies to our work as analysts. Like, what are my constraints as in my research? What are your constraints in your research? How do we address that constraint until it's no longer a constraint? Right? It moves somewhere else. It's a phenomenal topic, and I first came across it on the Jin Kim books, and it's been forever. Of course, it's a part of DevOps, but the message, I guess, the message for our audience here is that take a second. I know it's difficult, but take a breather, right, and try to look at this as a more cohesive system, and don't go chase you have to address the shiny, right? Because your principal, whoever is hired, is asking, okay, what do I do about this? Right? Okay, where does this fit into the scheme of things? So let's take, for example, the agentic capabilities from the model providers, and the agentic capabilities from AWS and others in terms of security, right? Okay, you now have an agent that can look into these things. Okay, it's not going to replace you it's not going to replace your job, right? It's not going to replace your role. It is going to replace some of the tasks that you do. To Tom's point about password resets, right? Okay, once you understand this, what do you change first in what you tell people above you? Hey, this is what is happening. So you have to communicate that message. Look, this is what this is actually doing, right? And what do you change in your daily work? Okay, if you are in software engineering, and I'll defer to Mitch as our expert, but if you are in software engineering and you are not including capability, you're not thinking about where to include these capabilities into your workflows, right? To quote Moneyball, one of my favorite movies, right? At the end of, I hope I'm not spoiling it for people. Like when Billy Bean is talking to John Henry at the end of the movie, right? If they're not changing their teams to use the tactics that Billy Bean described, they are dinosaurs, and they're going to be sitting on their couches in October as the Boston Red Sox wins the World Series, right? That was the line. If you're not changing your workflows to see where you incorporate these agentic workflows, there's a meteor coming your way, right? But you have to do it in a calm, controlled manner.
So, application of that, Fernando, taking your wisdom on that, is if you're a consumer of security products, vendor comes out with an agent capability or an AI a better better mousetrap using AI. As a consumer, you have to look at it and say, "That's very cool, and that solves a really interesting problem." Is it actually the problem I need to have solved, right? Is this where I need to be focusing right now? So do you chase the shiny object or do you chase the goose with the golden egg, right? You want those are the things you want to evaluate against. What is the bottleneck? What is the constraint I have? What's limiting me from doing what's valuable for the company? And that's how you can apply this. So it works directly.
So one of the challenges I have with that is one, regime change is hard. It doesn't matter where you are. The other flip side of that is people don't sell that. They sell products, and products themselves are not like paradigm shifting things, no matter how much they would like to tell you that. But I think one of the issues that you run into is that most organizations now, the way that they do their security structure of policy creation and enforcement and things like that, a lot of times are very additive at best. Like we added a thing and now we have to adjust it. We added a new thing, we have to adjust things. And tool vendors, people who are creating solutions for that, have a really hard time understanding how the interaction works, because you're either a company that is making a thing from best practices, and then when you implement it, you realize that you don't do best practices, and so people don't use the full tool. But the flip side of that is a company that is very in touch with their customer base, and they're always saying, hey, what are the top 3 things you want this tool to be able to do? What are the things that you really want it to be able to take off your load? But then that creates this parallel building path of it will only ever do the things that we did that are wrong. It'll just do them really fast. And so then you're like, you have to blow this whole thing up. It's like correcting a golf swing, right? You can adjust a bad golf swing a lot, but past a certain point, you'll never get better because you're only working with adjustments from a bad starting foundation. Whereas, if you start over here with the other tool that says you got to blow the whole thing up, you've got to go back in, you've got to build it the quote unquote right way this time. And then this tool will accelerate you even faster than you could have imagined. A lot of companies will just throw their hands up in the air and go, well, it's been working for us and we're still in business. So we're not going to deal with it. We're not going to use your tool. And I think that that's a challenge that these vendors are going to have to have. How do you convince them to do things in a way that the tool can most efficiently help with, knowing that there's going to be a lot of work up front? It's something as simple as like those pre-questionnaire things. What do you do? Like, what is your job? And a lot of people are like, my job is to fix all the things and do all the stuff. No, your job is to tell me exactly what you do during the day and how you accomplish it, so that we can say, well, these 3 things can be automated, which takes an hour and a half of work off of your plate every day. Like, we've learned over the years, AIs are really dumb. They do pretty much what you tell them to do. So if your prompting is bad, if your job descriptions are bad, if your policy definitions are bad, AI is going to do the really bad thing really fast. And you're going to be mad because there was enough vagueness in everything that you let it get away with that.
I remember a poster I had in my bedroom as a teenager, like a Murphy's computer laws, right? And one of them was the uh, trying to remember to really mess things up requires a computer or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
To err is human, but to really screw things up, you need a computer.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, exactly,
yeah.
right, yeah, that's true. Like I keep saying, this should be the golden age of business process engineering for people, right? We should be understanding what it is that we're doing, right, so that we can decide what topics are applicable to use uh, uh, some level of automation, some level of machine learning, some level of generative AI, some level like when I think we're far from AGI. Right?
Oh
Let's
yeah.
agree on that. Yeah, but yes, it's the I think that you highlight a crucial problem, which is like founders deal with this on a regular basis, right? And Mitch and I talk to startup vendors and established vendors all the time. It's how are you framing what you built and how it deploys in a way that makes sense for people to see your worldview, right? This is where some of our work as analysts comes in. And hey, we talk to all sorts of vendors and we see what they're doing and we can give advice and whatnot. But this is also on you as a founder to understand what's going on in the world. So what Mitch described in terms of reading Goldblatt's The Goal, like if you don't understand that what you are building, right, it's a phenomenal tool, but it doesn't address the customer bottleneck, right? If it's before the bottleneck, you're just giving your customer more work. If it's after the bottleneck, it's wonderful, but it doesn't move the needle for your customer. If you don't understand that mental concept, that's going to be challenging for you to bring a product to market. Right? It's about how do you evolve that thinking. Sorry.
And one thing about automation too is there's a flip side to the coin, and somewhere along the way, I kind of learned this lesson, which is the fastest way to get something done is not to have to do it at all. In other words, eliminate the problem. How do you just eliminate? Is it actually a problem we need to solve, or can you just take it out of the equation? And that's another way for companies to innovate is we've taken that problem off the table. So it's not even the bottleneck anymore. It's not even a problem we have to deal with. So, just doing things faster or automating them isn't always the right answer. Sometimes it's the wrong answer.
And yeah, it's what's the quote that if Henry was it Henry Ford that if people wanted a like if he asked what people wanted, he would have said a faster horse or
Mhm.
but this is bringing this back to cybersecurity. Like one of the things that is so interesting is the push that CISA and was doing and Bob Lord in particular from CISA, like name dropping him on memory safe languages, right? Can you eliminate entire classes of vulnerabilities by not using languages that are vulnerable to the overflows and so on, right? How do you get vendors? How do you get, on one hand, how do you make it possible for vendors to implement those practices, right? And how do you want and how do you make it so that customers understand to ask for them, and most importantly, be willing to pay for that, right? So how do you again goes back to secure by default, secure by design, right? And secure by demand.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I want to thank you guys for this great discussion. And it sounds like we're on the cusp of creating an economics podcast at the rate we're going, in addition to all the other things we do.
Yes, and a process engineering one too.
Oh God,
Sure,
yes,
why not? But the good news is that in between the economics lessons and the security banter that you get here, these two gentlemen are super busy with all the stuff that they have going on. Mitch, what have you got you're working on that people should be checking out?
Well, I have two papers coming out that are just being issued, of which Fernando was a peer reviewer. One is about observability native, this idea of we build in observability from the very beginning of the software creation process, not as an ops tool. And then another is a framework for agent control planes. So you can understand what all these vendors are releasing. What do they do and how do they kind of fit together into something that makes sense? Because it is, as they release pieces of that, why is it important or is it? And where do I need it and when do I need it? So that's my two big things is trying to kind of put some structure in place to help understand the problems that we're solving.
Yeah,
Fernando, how about you?
and from my end, there's lots going on. Of course, we are as we're recording this in late February. My RSAC conference schedule is full. Right, I'm sorry, I was just navigating what does that schedule look like, and it's done. I'm really looking forward to the conversations. We just got a paper out, should be published in the next few days, on AI factories and the impact that they are having on cybersecurity. And also the other thing that's interesting is that, as I like to say, there's more to life than AI. And so I'm really glad to be working with so I'm working with Tom on a paper on some analysis on SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, right? So we're looking into, well, what does SASE change in the age of AI, right? And so this is an area that's near and dear to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah. And as Fernando said, I'm working with him on that. I've also got some pieces of information that will be coming out soon on futurumgroup.com. And of course, we do all the Tech Field Day stuff. So make sure you stay tuned to techfieldday.com, including upcoming schedules for things like RSAC, Networking Field Day, AI Field Day, Security Field Day, and all the rest. We want to thank you all very much for listening to this episode of the Security Boulevard podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you know what to do. Go over to YouTube and hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. You can also subscribe in your favorite podcast application. We would appreciate it if you'd leave a rating, a review, a comment, something so that people notice the show and it helps grow our audience. This podcast is brought to you by securityboulevard.com and the Future Room Group. For show notes, future episodes, past episodes, all of the things, visit securityboulevard.com, TechStrong TV website, or our wonderful TechStrong TV app, which is available on all smart devices. We're going to get it running on a light switch next week. That ought to be real entertaining. Follow securityboulevard.com on X, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We're SecurityBLVD. That's all the content you could digest in a week, a month, or even a year. But we thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.